Guys, good morning and welcome to Real Talk. My name is Jerry Miller. It's a pleasure to be with you on a Tuesday. Thank you kindly for joining us. We are live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. Today we're powered by Sigora Solar. Sigora Solar, just a trusted name and solar power for your house. Sigora Solar. So much we're going to cover on today's program. We're going to welcome in a matter of moments Greg Slater to this show and to this set. This man is A-plus people and a guy who brings data and foundations for the statements he makes through stats and statistical analyses. We're going to welcome Greg Slater to the show in 5 seconds. Before I do, Judah Wickower, our foundation and director behind the I Love CVille Network, always try to give him a plug. And Judah, on that note, why don't we go to the two-shot and welcome Greg Slater to the show. First, good morning. Second, you're looking sharp. I love the shirt. I got to ask what kind of shirt that is right there. Gosh. I've noticed the cuff has got some flair right there.
I believe it's Johnson & Murphy.
Very nice.
At my age, that becomes one of the...
Johnson & Murphy's legit.
It's legit. Yeah. I have a teenager, though, so we have a little vineyard vines in the house.
Okay.
But, of course, Roback is maybe...
Is your favorite?
It's my go-to. Look, I tell people I shop in the pro shop. I'm always golf ready.
Yeah, he's always golf ready. So the reason I highlighted the button down today is normally we see Greg in a quarter zip Roback.
It's warming up. It's warming up.
It's warming up. All right, so much we got to cover here. We know when you're on the show here, we're going to hear data and we're going to learn from you. I'd love to start with some macro data, some macro key performance indicators. We were talking kind of in this pre-production meeting about some of the stakeholders nationally that you follow and you trust. The show is yours, Greg Slater. Where do you want to start?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, look, I lived through the recession, right? We're representing builders and developers, and it was a tough time. And we used to talk about, we used to always think Charlottesville was insulated and it was going to be different than everywhere else. And then, of course, thermonuclear winter set in 2008. And I remember someone had told me, what's it going to feel like when the market gets really bad? And for what we went through last time, and it was like, it's going to feel like nothing, right? And that's what it felt like, nothing. The level of activity just got really low. And I started running stats back then to look for anything on the bleeding edge of activity to show that things were improving or going in a different direction, whatever. Just instead of just looking at the historical, what happened last month or 6 months ago or last year and all these things, it wasn't really telling me what was going on at the bleeding edge of the market. So I started doing that. So when the pandemic hit, I started doing it in different ways because we were seeing influence on the market in ways we weren't familiar with. You know, if you go back to when that happened, I'll never forget, people started pulling their homes off the market and we all predicted a crash, or at least some type of crash to housing values. And the exact opposite happened here because, and I'll tell you, I was in New York City over the weekend celebrating my 20th anniversary. And at the end of the trip, my wife had a friend she only knew virtually. And so we had brunch before we went to the airport. And this was a realtor from New York City. And she was describing her day and what she was going to do on that Sunday and do an open house and what was going on in New York City. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's the opposite of what's happening in Charlottesville. And I realized it's probably better to live in a place everybody wants to live during a pandemic than where everybody wants to leave, because their market is just coming back. Everybody left and now they're starting to come back. Our market is the opposite. Everybody showed up and wanted to own a piece of Charlottesville area during the pandemic. So just to give you an idea, so I've been tracking month over month what's happening to our inventory level, right? And to do that, I track how many homes resale listings are hitting the market every month and comparing it to the same period the year before. So for example, in January, new year, new life, what's going to happen with this real estate market?
January this year.
Yeah, Albemarle County, we started off by, in 2021, we listed 113 homes in the month of January. In 2020 and 2019, the 5-year average is about 200.
In the month of January.
Yeah, that's February. It's a little lower than that. Long story short, we only listed 64 homes in January.
64.
Yeah, and 73% of those sold immediately.
And immediately is characterized how? 5 days or under?
5 days or less.
5 days or less.
In that period of we're going to take showings for 3 days and then take offers. But that's basically 49 listings short after January compared to last year. And to describe last year, though, last year was rearranged, right? Everything kind of happened. Spring was late, winter was early. We actually ended last year pretty even on listings compared to 2020 and ahead on contracts. So it felt different, but it was a normal level of activity. But to start 49 listings off, and then this we were short again in February. So for the year now, after 2 months, we are 73 listings behind what we did last year. That's 30%.
That's a lot. That's a ton.
When the inventory is all-time low already, to give you an example, I once in a while I just go in the MLS and I plug in how many homes are on the market in Albemarle County, new construction, non-proposed, right? Stuff at least needs to be started. On February 8th, there were 76, just 76 homes. On March 8th, there were 96. So there's less than 100 homes for sale. Now, 22 of those are homes that aren't complete. They're under some stage of construction. They might even just be a foundation. But then when you break that down by price, which I haven't done, but I can tell you about 15% of those are probably over $1 million, which aren't going to matter to a lot of people in the market. And then when you get down to under 200 or under 300, it's next to nothing. And some of those homes have been on the market a very long time, and they're just problem listings that are difficult to sell.
Neil Williamson, hello, welcome to the show. Lee Elberson watching the program on LinkedIn. Antonio Maltese on LinkedIn. A lot of folks on Twitter. We got some DMs coming in already for you. So let's ask this question. Did the iron was so hot in 2020, the back half of 2020, and throughout 2021, did that 18-month period cannibalize listings we otherwise would have seen on the market now in 2022?
You're asking me if people hurried up and sold their homes in that period? 100%. And the ones who did it in 2020 are kicking themselves. And some of the people who did it in the spring of 2021 are kicking themselves. Because if you were trying to time the top of the market, which is not something
very
I
difficult
recommend to make a real estate purchase or sale based on timing of the market. Those people, if they got a little out of hit, the prices are still going up since then. So I know people who sold their homes and didn't really have any place to go, but they thought it was such a great time to sell. They moved into an apartment, but don't know how long they're going to be there now because conditions aren't loosening at all yet, which we'll continue to talk about. The other thing that happened, though, was the inability to find some place to go probably limited what's happening on an inventory level more than anything else. And thirdly, there's this whole track of people being able to own more than one home.
What's that mean?
Co-primary housing, right? I own a home in Charlottesville and I own a home wherever I like to vacation, and I can work from both, half and half.
Very nice. Spring market, will we have one?
Yeah, every month. We sold. I'll give you an example. In contracts in January, we're 119. Unfortunately, that was 40% off the year before. So what we're seeing now, and what I've personally been predicting, is sales activity has to go down simply because there's nothing for people to buy, and we're really starting to see it in the numbers. We didn't see it in 2021 yet. There was enough to keep things to feel relatively normal. I think we're going to start to see the end of the first quarter,
which is now.
When we get to the end of the first quarter and we start looking at closed sales this year over closed sales last year, then those numbers are going to be behind because we're not writing as many contracts. I mean, we're off by 74%. But in January, we only did 119 this year in January, but we did 146 in February, and we'll do more in March, and we'll do more in April, and we'll do more in May. We're still going to have that seasonality to the market, but we were 30% off on contracts in February too. For the year in Albemarle County now, we're 140 contracts behind where we were last year at this point in time.
How did we get into this situation?
How did we get into this situation?
There's a lot to unpack with that question.
There is. I mean, if you want to fly up to your highest level, and I'll put on my new construction hat and working with builders and developers, we have the lead economist for the National Association of Home Builders, comes to Charlottesville, gives a great presentation. He just gave it last week. But what they've been saying since the recession is, the population is growing faster than we can produce homes. And so I don't know if we've caught up yet, but I know for 10 years after the bottom of the recession, every year he'd put the graph up that showed the 50-year average for home production, and we weren't even building at that level. So you get behind millions of homes every year nationally, the population is growing, and then you have the whole phenomenon with the generations. The size of the millennials is more like the boomers than any other generation, and they're all turning home ownership age, and they've probably gone through a period of time where they weren't in the housing market because they were living with their parents, or all these things. It's a million death by 1,000 needles, but ultimately, there just aren't enough homes for our population.
So the statistic nationally is somewhere between 24 and 25 million rooftops behind from a new construction standpoint. Do you have back of the napkin, or have you brainstormed at all how far behind we are new construction in our region?
No, I don't. I don't know
would
that.
you think?
We have so many layers to this problem. I know you talk about this stuff all the time, but there's the regulatory environment that makes it so difficult in Albemarle County. I mean, we had a developer last year in a presentation at Carsey. It took them almost 2.5 years to get 45 lots platted in Belvedere, a pre-approved third phase community that had been around for a decade. Where the lots should just be coming out as fast as they can get street in front of them, and it takes forever. The amount of time it takes to get a new home now and what it costs is hard to swallow in many cases.
Neil Williamson has made the point on programs past in regards to Brook Hill, which is north of town in Albemarle County, 19 years from presentation and planning to shovel cracking ground. 19 years for Brook Hill, guys. Joanne Mackey's watching in Keswick. She's the queen of Keswick, a huge aficionado and evangelist of Glenmore. She says maybe people want to stay put and see what happens with the international activities or war and energy and oil. They want to be close to work. Many millennials do not want the suburbs that the boomers are selling. So there's a lot to unpack with that one. Joanne's an economist herself, so she routinely contributes to the show. I want to ask you about the impact of the war. I want to ask you about the impact of rising oil, and how you're seeing that locally here in Central Virginia.
Well, they're just starting to become conversations at this point, right? We're right at the bleeding edge of gas prices hitting levels that shock people when they go to the pump. Obviously, the images of war like this hasn't really happened in our lifetime. And so in the last week, I've talked to 3 agents in different conversations where they said, yes, I have at least one person who's told me they're backing off of the market to wait and see what happens. And it might be because, yes, I don't want to have that commute and that expensive gas bill, or I'm just concerned what's going to happen to this war in relationships of the stock market and how my wealth feels, or what is this going to do to interest rates?
So you're talking consumer confidence here.
Yeah, and we feel it first in conversations with people that we've been engaged with. It's funny, the time you might be engaged with a buyer now as a realtor is easily 1 to 2 years. I mean, I just had a listing in Crozet, to give you an example. The problem, Crozet is a 4-bedroom family home commodity market. And going into February, so I had these folks, they were leaving because of coaching staff change, so they knew they were leaving, but we were kind of slow playing it because they didn't know exactly how things were going to turn out. But I was trying to figure out what their home was going to be worth, and I couldn't because there were no comps this year, but I knew it was going to be more than the sales last year because we know we're in appreciation, so we got to have the building blocks each year to figure out value with what buyers are willing to pay. And then I realized after 10 weeks of the year, we hadn't had a 4-bedroom, single-family detached home in Crozet under 600 listed.
Wow. That's a hell of a stat right there.
It's shocking.
It's shocking. That is
because
shocking.
that is the market.
Yeah.
And so these folks had a home that we looked at the comps. The best we could determine would be about a $545,000 easily defendable price, more than I would have guessed a year ago. And I didn't tell anybody about the listing, but the community is so wound up about the real estate market. Neighbors talk to friends, talk to network. Somebody showed up and wanted to buy it and said, we would like
Before you listed?
Yeah, I hadn't even got the pictures.
Not even on coming soon?
They were like, what do we have to pay you? Not even on coming soon. They're like, what do we have to pay you so you stop now?
Get out of town.
Yeah, and so I sat down with my clients and they said, you understand you'll forego the bidding scenario or whatever. But they made a calculation on their own needs. They said, you know what, we'd do that for $600
And you guys were considering $545
as a starting list price.
And even something else to highlight, your seller is not paying 3% representation on the buyer side.
The other person had a buyer,
okay.
A buyer's agent. Yeah.
Okay.
There aren't a lot of buyers running around without buyer's agents.
Especially not in this market.
You can't navigate this market in any competitive situation without one. It just won't work.
You know what I heard yesterday?
But the point is, we got the $600.
You did well by your client.
Yeah. But the buyer's doing cartwheels down the street.
No, of course.
This was the point I was trying to make. They had been in the market for 18 months. They had been beat out in multiple offer situations at least a half a dozen times.
I heard a term for the first time yesterday called, and that was a hell of a story right there. I heard a term for the first time yesterday called complementary seller possession. Mm-hmm. And I literally had a conniption, not a conniption, but it blew my mind. And to give layman's terms here, seller possession, a seller sells his or her house.
You pay them.
To a buyer. Yeah.
They get their money.
The buyer pays the seller and gives them their money. And this market is so competitive, the seller of the home is getting free extra time to stay in the home after getting their bag of money for selling their house. And that is being offered now.
So, Jerry, you have to think,
crazy, right?
You have to think, I'm selling a home for you. You have to think about it like this. And in the certain segments of the market, you can easily expect 3 to 5 offers. It's usually about 25% of the showings, except in some cases. I just sold a home in Old Trail where we got 6 showings and 3 offers, so it was more like half of them, but it was a one-level home, a little bit of a unicorn, really nicely done. I did an open house that Sunday just for fun to see what would happen. 70 people came.
70?
Yeah.
And what kind of time range?
2 hours. I mean, the door never closed. But, yeah, so we went out there at $795, and with only 6 showings, 2 people took it to $870.
Did the house appraise?
It hadn't appraised yet, but here's the thing. So let's talk about this for a second. If you want to go down this rabbit hole with you, I will. So
please.
As a seller, if you get 2 or 3 offers that are within $5,000 of each other, you've got to start figuring out how you're going to decide between them. It actually gets difficult because you usually don't have a front runner on price so far that these things are ending up, in my experience in the market I'm dealing in, they always come in around 10% more than list.
Okay.
If the list price is fair, you can still list it too high and knock a buyer out of the running. But you have to try to offer terms that differentiate you. So how much?
All cash.
Cash is king.
Yeah.
The next is how much you're putting down.
Contingency with inspection.
So the inspection contingencies are being written in more different ways than I've ever experienced. The traditional way is we're going to have 2 weeks to do the home inspection. We're going to review that. We're going to send you a list of deficiencies we'd like corrected. We're going to have 5 days to negotiate through those, or we can walk away.
Okay.
Right?
Now it's pass-fail at best, right?
Well, sort of. So then you got pass-fail. Pass-fail is I get 2 weeks or less. We're trying to do them faster. There's less activity, so you can get the home inspections faster. So the periods are shortening, which is good. You're trying to remove these contingencies as fast as possible.
Oh, because you're saying there's less inventory in the market, so the inspectors can do the work
usually
faster.
In the spring, 2 weeks isn't enough. Now a week is enough because all the inspectors are standing around going, pick me.
Right.
But so I might write an inspection if I write an inspection that says pass-fail, it's if I don't like the inspection, I'm telling you I'm not going to ask for repairs, but I can still cancel the contract. So if you can still cancel the contract, that's still a very serious contingency.
Yeah.
So now we've evolved to the next level. The next level is I'm going to do that inspection. I'm going to remove the right to cancel and the right to renegotiate you for repairs unless I find a singular item in the home that is proven by a contractor with an estimate to cost X or more.
Oh, interesting.
You're putting a threshold. So, for example, on that
roof foundation,
on the $800,000 house, it was $5,000. On the $600,000 house, it was $2,500, something like that. And so, at that point, you just want to. But here's the thing. 1 out of 4 of my transactions have just been no inspection.
No inspection?
No inspection at all.
So does the buyer, is the
And that
buyer,
can make the difference in many cases.
is the buyer doing an inspection just for personal knowledge? Or is literally buying the home with no inspection?
Well, you have to think about it, how bad you want the home and what you're willing to pay for it, and what risk you're willing to take. I mean, if you buy a home without inspection, once that contract is signed, you know, there's no out.
Yeah.
No out on the inspection, so you're not even doing one. So you just don't know. I don't ever advise anyone to do that, but I'm telling you, people are doing it a lot. I like the one in between where, you know what, if we find a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 problem, yeah, now I get some rights in the terms of this. But I'm telling you, if there's just minor BS, look, in this market, we treated our resales like new construction. People are looking at the report and asking, it might be the door doesn't latch. It's like, we shouldn't be negotiating over doors that don't latch when it takes a screwdriver half turn to, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But that's where we were. So hopefully this will pull us back towards normal a little bit.
How many deals have you done where it's an all-cash offer? And then secondly, how many deals have you done where the homes are not appraising for contract offer, so they're bringing cash to make up the difference?
So 2 very great questions. So the higher you go in price point, the more likely cash is.
Okay.
Like the only cash deal I've done, I've only had a few listings to sell this year.
So this is jumbo market?
I sold a home for $1.275. That was my cash deal.
Okay.
And, you know, some people I'm seeing that's a little more, you know, they're doing the 80, 90% LTV. But what you do in that situation.
Loan to value.
And so, yeah, if you're worried about competing with cash, you're worried, if you have a loan, you're lesser than cash in the eyes of the seller. And how you combat that, because the reason is cash has no appraisal. Loan has appraisal. Now, for a while there, lenders were waiving some appraisals. If you were putting enough down. Here's something I think you'll find interesting. The Great Recession, you know what the biggest mistake for lenders in the Great Recession was? Other than all the liar loans and stuff? Nobody was tracking the value of the collateral against all this mortgage debt. But now because of algorithms like Zillow has, everybody has an algorithm. So now the banks are paying people, they're tracking the value of their collateral. So if I go to do a loan on a house, they're going to go try to figure out the value with their little algorithm before they even hire an appraiser. And so if they're like, oh, wait a minute, this says it's worth X and this guy's putting down 30%, let's just skip the appraisal. And so that was happening for a while. I don't see that as much. But we're writing appraisal contingencies now. So the house I sold for $600, they were putting down 20% and they agreed to put down, then they put in what we define the appraisal gap. It says in the contract, if the home appraises for less than the contract price, that will be defined as the appraisal gap.
Because you thought market was 545, so that's a 55K gap there.
Yeah, there's one comp that supports the value of that home.
At 600?
Yeah, it just happened a few weeks before. The appraisers aren't coming up short. The appraisers have to understand market conditions. What's the number one indicator of value in any home? What someone's willing to pay for it. So you have a contract. If you tell an appraiser you had 5 contracts and 2 are willing to go to that number, I don't even know what we're paying them to do, right? They're going to get there. But we are still worried that because as a seller, if you have 5 offers and you have to pick one, the other 4 are going to fly away. You don't know if they're going to be there if this deal doesn't work. So you're trying to make sure you pick the most reliable buyer as much as the highest price. And so the appraisal gap language says if the appraisal comes up short, I'm willing to commit X number of dollars to hold this deal together.
Ray Cadell, we're going to get to your comment here. You got some folks here. Jonathan has this for Greg. Does he think gas prices are going to soften outer county real estate?
It will eventually, sure.
Which part's first?
It's hard to say, though, because, look, we're still living in a pool of buyers that are bound and determined to own something now because they have to. And until we run out of them, until there are more than one buyer for every home that hits the market, that it's happening in, I just told you, 2/3 of the homes that come on the market, they're not going to affect it that much because, you know, you need a place to live.
Which counties or jurisdictions softened first? Waynesboro, Shenandoah Valley, Augusta, or are we thinking Louisa, Buckingham, Nelson?
Yeah,
Madison?
I'm fortunate to do business inside the four corners of Albemarle County, and over half of that's in Crozet. So I'm getting ready to have the opportunity to. I have an investor who owns 22 townhomes in Fluvanna outside of the lake, and I'm going to sell those for him starting at the end of the month, and I'll have a better idea what 225 feels like and what the conversation around that buyer is. But yeah, I don't have any immediate experiences what's happening with the buyer mindset for having to commute with the gas prices going up.
I love this show. I learn from you guys. What's the strategy you're going to utilize to sell 22 townhomes outside of Lake Monticello?
So they're all rented. Here's the strategy. I'm an old school new construction guy, right? I've been doing it since the 90s. Well,
You're the new construction guy.
How do you sell new construction? You build a model and you show them what they can get, and then you write contracts into future available homes that can be built. Well, in this case, we're going to take the first one, show them how we're going to make these look after the tenant moves out, repaint, new carpet. We're going to polish it up. We're going to set a price point on it, and we're going to see how much demand there is, and then and probably avoid the bidding war and letting it get run up, because we're not trying to sell one, we're trying to sell 22. That's when you're trying to sell one of something, that's where you can get the quick spike in a transaction of value. But when you really have more, and we're not putting them all in the market at once, because that's immediate. That's 22 townhomes at $225,000 to $250,000.
Yeah, you're competing against each other.
That's right. So we're going to do one. We're going to try to see how many people want that. We'll sell it to the first person who's the most qualified to buy it. And then we'll say, well, guess what? That one will be vacant in a month. That one will be vacant in a month. And then we'll try to, we'll see how it goes. It's a real experiment in the demand in a certain segment of the market.
Well, you couldn't pick a better time to sell 22 townhomes than right now.
I'm not sure if these market conditions, of course these market conditions caused this. These townhomes are owned by a builder who had to build them in 2007 because he couldn't sell them. So he built them for himself and kept them.
So that is brilliant. So you take the first one. This was your plan, right? Mm-hmm. That was brilliant. You take the first one when the lease expires.
Yeah, it's empty now. We're gonna the owner's gonna spend 3 weeks getting it ready for me. Then we'll do an open house and list it and just see how many people want to buy it. And we can only sell it once. So instead of we don't want to jam that price up too high. We're going to try to keep the price in a range that will absorb 22.
Yeah, because that first one's the comp for the other 21.
100%.
Yeah. So he's basically saying he's got to do the first one strategically to justify number 22.
Yeah, then you adjust for end unit, interior unit, backyard, no backyard, all that stuff. Just like a condo building.
Do you take, this is fascinating, do you take the first one and jazz it up with all the sexy finishes? Or is this coming in like middle of the road finishes?
The finishes they have.
Oh, existing finishes.
Just take out the wear and tear.
Paint and carpet is what you're saying.
Yeah.
God, this is such a
It's an entry-level townhome.
No, I know. This is such a fascinating market.
We're not trying to make them more expensive. We're trying to sell them. I mean, if somebody wants to invest in replacing Formica with granite while they own it, they can do that. But we don't want to force that on them.
Right.
Because as someone who's spent as much time in the affordable housing world, when you start talking about these price points, every dollar on monthly payment and price counts for qualification, especially with now interest rates did break above 4, but they pulled back last week slightly. So we're right about 4. But all this stuff matters. So we're trying to keep them, at a point where we can absorb all 22 of them over the next 12 months.
Ray Cadell says, I sometimes carry an inspector with me in the actual showing if I think my folks are serious. You seeing that?
He's got inspectors that'll do that with him. Good for him. I haven't seen anybody do that before, but that's a great strategy if you can get someone to do that with you.
Jen Finazzo, the owner of Sal's Cafe Italia, watching the program as we speak. Your questions, your comments are welcome here on the show. Nancy Denby is giving you some props on the program
she's
right
a relative.
now. She says hello and
Hi,
is
Nancy.
giving you love.
Hi, Nancy.
So throw this to you, and we're going to get to the comments that are coming in here from Crozet and Keswick here in a matter of moments. I ask all the agents this, and your opinion matters. Top 1% opinion, I would say here. You've been doing this for so long. Is this a real estate bubble?
It doesn't feel like a real estate bubble to me. I mean, this feels like a very supply and demand driven instance, right? The bubble was created by a lot of funky lending, financial games, and people buying homes that shouldn't be buying homes. They were buying homes for the wrong reason. I mean, when you buy an investment property and have no problem with negative cash flow because you think it's going to appreciate so much, that's different. The home buying that's going on now, the people that are competing for these homes plan to own them a very long time in most cases. I kind of think of this more like a correction up. due to the extreme supply and the disruption of the pandemic and the extreme supply and demand problem it exposed, because it drove demand to Charlottesville. It's like, I don't know if I mentioned this before, that being in New York City. I mean, it dawned on me after talking to that New York City realtor, it's like, oh my God, thank God I live in a place people wanted to go to during the pandemic instead of run away from.
We've become a Zoom town.
Yes. So, we'll go back to the data. I'm just trying to look for a clue for any trend towards a more balanced market to cool off the appreciation. Can appreciation maintain the levels it's maintaining, double-digit appreciation year over year? Of course not. But I'll give you an example. The NAHB economist last week said, CoreLogic, they administer the Case-Shiller Index. Their prediction for 2022 appreciation year over year is 3%. Zillow's is 20%. It's somewhere in between, obviously, I think is the answer. But, the median this last week or today, for last week's numbers, we'll talk about Altos Research for a minute if you want. It's a great resource for anybody who's interested in this granular level discussion of the numbers. Altos Research is a company that sells data to realtors or people who want real estate market data. But what they do is the owner of that company has created 5 or 6 key indicators at the beginning of the pandemic to follow these inventory levels, immediate sales, the same thing I follow, bidding wars, and they've got the matrix to do all that. And so every week he gives 10 minutes away on his YouTube channel, Altos Research, and he goes over where things are. Here's where we are right now. This is nationally.
Okay.
The median price nationally last week was $395,000. It was a 1% increase week over week. It was a 12% increase year over year.
Okay.
We're about to hit 400. So the next real barrier he's watching is breaking 400K on a national level for median price of household or houses in the country. In 2018, it was 300K. So in 3 years, we went from 300K median price to 400K median price.
Okay, so that's a hell of a lot.
And last year, the market, it bounced. It got to 399 and backed off and never broke. So he's predicting in the next few weeks we're going to break that 400K median price on a national level. He shows us that year over year, last week, rents were up 17% nationally. The inventory graph is straight down. There's no sign of the inventory starting to replenish itself yet, except he predicts by the end of the year we'll start to see a little bit of an increase in the inventory levels.
And associated with what?
Sooner or later, you're going to run out of buyers willing to pay these prices, right? Supply and demand, but prices are the control mechanism. If prices keep going up, it will slow the demand, and then prices will have to level off first. Will they decline? Will they decline sharply, which would be your definition of a bubble, I assume? There's no indication of any of that. It's, of course, all possible. We have a war in a foreign country that could go in a lot of directions. So all bets are off. But strictly looking at the basics, I don't feel like we're in a bubble.
This question's come in from Grayson. Can he put in perspective appreciation year over year in the Charlottesville region or MSA?
I don't look at median price that much. It's steadily increasing.
Double digits?
I think so. We have some great reports out there. Nest has them, Carr has them. You can find those reports online, and you can look at the median price over time. In the townhome market is what I generally looked at. I can remember when the new townhomes were just starting to hit the 300 mark. And 3 or 4 years ago, they hit the 400 mark, and now those same townhomes have hit the 500 mark. So, the cost of homes are going up dramatically here.
Sarah Hill Buczynski from Howard Hanna's got a question for you.
Okay.
She says, what do you tell your clients who are waiting for... You have a lot of realtors asking questions right now, so you can tell the dude is respected in the space. Sarah Hill Buczynski, what do you tell your clients who are waiting for the prices to stabilize before buying? No guarantees that this is going to happen anytime soon. Is that what you're advising them?
I tell them they have to pay extra for the crystal ball. No.
He doesn't tell them.
I tell them I don't know, and I try to bring the conversation back to their personal situation and what they're trying to accomplish and why they're buying and what they expect to happen in the next 5 or 10 years of their life, because it's a difficult, very personal, oftentimes emotional conversation. The buyers out there that are throwing these bids in, and this is why I explain to my buyers that are getting ready to jump into a multiple offer situation. I said, you can forget about me pulling comps and talking about market value. This is a competition. And so you have to decide the most you're willing to pay for the house and the most you're willing to put down out of pocket for this house, and your limit of your risk taking as it pertains to a home inspection, and can you give the seller the occupancy terms they want? Does the seller want you to close in 3 weeks, give them their money and be gone? Or do they want you to close in a month and let them stay for 2 months for free? And you got to go figure out what the seller wants and give the seller as much as they can. But you have to get yourself to a place emotionally you don't care if you don't get the house, right? You got to just do the best you can. The rest is outside of your control. But there are extenuating circumstances. If your lease is up at the end of May, and I've done this twice this year. Lease is up at the end of the May, and guess what the landlord's doing?
Asking well over 90 days in advance if you're renewing.
They're not renewing because they want to sell in this market.
They want to sell the rental in the market. They don't want to even lease it, so they're saying we're not going to renew. So that person's out.
That's right.
They're out of luck.
These real life situations come into play in those things. So it's a very hard question to answer, and you just got to have a long, honest conversation. And for me, if someone's planning on owning that home, if they're moving into a school district and putting them in kindergarten, and they know they're planning on being there for all the school years and maybe beyond.
And overpaying now is not big a deal.
Overpaying now is not a big deal. I start to have conversations with them about the same conversations we have in affordable housing. I said, you get this you get this payment you can afford, shorten that 30 years. Don't refinance in 5 years to make your payment lower. These don't stretch out you're just paying interest to the bank. Pay the home off faster, and it will take away any potential risk of a slowdown in appreciation or even drop in value. Because if you cut $30,000 in interest out of the life of your mortgage, you just hedge $30,000 of depreciation in that potential.
That's good advice.
That's the biggest mistake people make in my career. This refinancing concept, because all they see our home as is a car with a monthly payment, and that's not it. You got to get these principal balances down.
So what do you make of the 40-year home mortgage?
I mean, no experience with it, and I don't know anybody offering it, but I've heard about it.
Yeah. That's don't do the 40-year mortgage, guys.
That's a hedge against interest rates going up too high.
Yeah, that's for sure. Neil Williamson, home construction prices are significantly impacted by regulatory, fuel, and labor costs. Government controls one of these levers. More housing everywhere for everyone. So we often highlight this statistic for you. Take a $400,000 home in Albemarle County. 24%, or basically $100K of that $400,000 home in Albemarle County, is associated with red tape and bureaucracy and permitting, and not granite or brick or plumbing or toilets or appliances or hardwood floors. That's a shocking statistic.
It's a shocking. Let me give you another shocking statistic. North Point, right? We started writing contracts in there last January. We weren't able to start in any of those homes until November, right? The plat wasn't quite recorded, and once the plat got recorded, it took 3 or 4 months to get the permits. Construction cost average increase built into those contracts. So imagine you signed a contract last January for $650,000, and you thought you were going to get your home by the end of the year. They were lucky to get it started by the end of the year. But before they would start construction on the home, the builder has to come to you and say, this is how much cost went up. We're going to split it with you because we know this is painful, but it's still 5%, another $30,000 to $35,000. And out of 20 times I saw that happen, only one walked away. Because if they walked away, they knew that home price would actually be higher to rebuy it.
Yeah, because in some ways, they're almost getting a break because the builder's splitting it with them.
That's right.
That's what you're saying.
That's 100% what I'm saying.
Yeah, so how does the bank respond in that scenario?
What do you mean?
Or is that cash out of pocket that the buyer's having to come to the table with?
It depends on a case-by-case basis. A lot of times in these new construction deals, people have bandwidth to increase their loan amount.
So it's cash out of their pocket.
It can be cash out of their pocket. The contract price is going up. Whether or not they put down 10%, 20% or more by the time the closing happens is up to them.
So this is a lot from the economist, Joanne here. Cash right out of a bank or from sale of a mortgage-free home, a retiree, but not out to pasture. Investors in Nova condo market are walking in with $350,000 up front. She also says, look at the impact of rising gas prices. The middle class is very concerned. And then an increase potentially in real estate tax rate. I got to ask you about the real estate tax rate increase that's on the horizon. This could be devastating, she says, for the middle class and for first-time home buyers. Charlottesville will only be available to those who have the financial means to live here. Get ready for it. And then she also adds this. The president is on soon. He's got a press conference, I think, that is actually going on now. Let's see what he says and how the market reacts. I have lost value but being older, easier to absorb for me. And she means her portfolio. No matter how much one wants to live somewhere, it is not only getting in, it's getting difficult, but day-to-day living, I would love to buy a Manhattan apartment, but I can't do it. And then she's just basically talking market dynamics. Joanne, we love when you watch the show here. So here's what I want to cover. And Daniel McDougall, the mortgage broker, will get to your comment here, and a lot of other realtors with questions or comments for Greg. Stock market volatility, how you seeing it impact what you do and the folks you represent. Multiple folks are asking about oil and how this is going to make Albemarle and Charlottesville even more coveted to live because it's close to the epicenter of employment, which people are saying on the feed that's going to drive up prices even more in Albemarle and Charlottesville. So I want your take on that. Volatility in the market, and will oil and gas costs actually make Albemarle and Charlottesville more expensive for buyers?
Yes, to all the above. I mean, these are things that are, we talk about houses as appreciating, but when the prices go up, everything else, we call it inflation, right? It's very expensive to live here, and, how could it not impact it? What's crazy about this market that I always come back to and I often say is a lot of the people coming here, we just had a conversation about how expensive Albemarle County is.
It's cheap for some.
It's cheap for most of the people buying homes right now.
The folks, and I'll put this anecdotally, the folks across from me in my neighborhood sold a 1,400 square foot townhome in Northern Virginia for like $1.4 million, $1.5 million. Came down to my neighborhood, bought a 5,000 plus square foot home for $850K.
Yeah.
Put in $200K to remodel.
Yep.
And then still walked with like $250,000.
What's crazy is in this world, I have two new neighbors right walking distance to my house. They're both working from home.
That's what they're doing across the street.
They have to drive to DC twice a month.
Literally what the folks across the street are doing.
And they have their DC salaries. And they bought one of them doesn't even have kids yet. They're recently married and they spent $925,000. 100% financing. So I'm going to remind you I have an 11:15.
I know, and you got a lot coming in.
A hard stop. So of course, all those events, gas prices, everything that hurts your pocketbook hurts your ability for what you spend on housing, for sure.
How about this one from? So Sarah says people are coming here with bags of money. Daniel McDougall, DMAC, do you see the trend of the right to reassign building contracts make a comeback? You sign a contract to build a $600K house for delivery 12 months from now. At the end of the contract, that house is now worth $700K and you flip it.
I've seen some people flip quickly after closing, but no, we're not seeing that right now because there's no mobility, there's no fluidity and mobility in the market. People are just trying to get a vine to hang on. They're not trying to make money or game the market. They need a place to live.
Christy Lynn Beck may have some buyers for you for your 22 homes and your 22 townhomes
End of March.
Fluvanna.
We're going to list at the end of March.
She says, hey, I'm just tuning in. I missed Greg's comment about bringing 22 homes to market in Fluvanna. What's the price range? I think I have buyers for you. You're going to close the deal on the talk show
It's
here.
225 to 250, and we'll be trickling them out over the next 8. Some of them are rented into 2023.
She says she may have buyers for all your townhomes.
Well,
right
then
here.
she can contact me. We could talk. We've talked about packaging some up for people who want to buy with a year or more lease in place.
So this is what I'm going to do. Christy, I'm going to tag Christy. I'm tagging Greg Slater. I'm writing this in the feed here. Christy Lynn Beck. I'm tagging Greg Slater for you to follow up. Literally did this right there. That'd be great if you closed the deal. So this question for you. What does he expect new construction cost of goods to do with increasing oil? Please highlight how this domestic problem we have is going to impact home builders.
Well, look, everybody that has to drive to the job site to do work is paying more when gas prices go up. You would be shocked at how many products that go into a home are petroleum based, from shingles to whatever. I find about price increases when the one major builder that I represent through helping him market homes in the MLS to realtors sends me the email and says, last week we did it. I did it on Friday. Just from a cost of construction standpoint, his townhomes that average $450,000 for the first time this year, we did probably 4 or 5 price increases just on cost, but the townhomes went up $3,500, the single family homes went up $7,500 last week. And the next time he sees, because it's so complex to talk about, because builders that are building 100 or more homes a year are often in quarterly contracts, and so they're working on contracts for these commodities. They're working hard. Like Christopher Bremen, who's been on the show many times.
He's awesome.
His saying, I think, is
Homes.
We have to spend 9 months to do 6 months of work, because they're spending so much time procuring and pricing and trying to get a hold of the stuff they need to build the home and lock in a price on a schedule that works for building the home. It's just they're spending a third more of the time in man hours to get the home built administratively.
So, follow-up question from me. Do the custom home builders and or the production home builders, do they like these market dynamics?
I think they like it from a standpoint that they're way ahead of their sales plan, right? They're not really building a lot of homes that aren't before they're sold. Now they're having to pivot to get foundations in the ground. They like it. They don't like it. They don't like passing. They don't like a sliding floor for their cost, because in some cases, and at least for the first year of all this, they had to eat all those costs. They weren't prepared for the cost to go up. They didn't have
the language in the contract?
Some did, some didn't, but they just had never done it. They had to learn how to do it. They had to learn how to have conversations with people about costs going up and how you pass those along to them. And then they had, instead of having that conversation mid-construction pot committed, they had to move that conversation to pre-contract. And so they're getting the sales they want, but I don't think they necessarily like it. That's not the right word. I mean, like I said, Christopher is spending more time to do the same amount of work for the same profit margin. And in many cases, their profit margins are eroding, which puts downward pressure on, I don't know if you ever, commissions that are able to be paid to realtors and things like that. Everything all the soft costs have downward pressure on them for sure, because you can't mess with the hard costs.
Guys, I don't know if we're going to get to all these questions. I got to be straightforward here. We got a hard stop at 11:15. This dude's a busy guy.
I want to know, is Keith watching?
Keith is watching. Yeah, I think.
Hey, Keith.
I think he might be. This 22 deal that's happening right now, I think he might be a little sour.
I already told him.
Okay. Well, multiple agents are asking about these 22 homes that are coming to market in Fluvanna. Dude, this literally shows you how tight the inventory in the market is, where a guy who has access to 22 rooftops mentions it on a show, and folks are flocking to this, literally in front of me. A few questions regarding the 22 townhouses. What's the average rent for the 22 townhouses? Are they in an HOA? Any of those short-term rentals? What does he think the end unit with yards are going to run versus the ones that don't have the yards and are in the center of the strip?
Look, we're still working on all of that. I haven't looked. I've seen the rent roll. I haven't memorized the numbers. I'm waiting for them to get the home ready. I've got photography scheduled, and when
You may not have to do that.
when I go there to get the pictures, I'll study all that and I make a final price recommendation. But the price range we've talked about now in general is $225 to $250.
I mean, that's a great price in this market.
Yeah.
I mean, 220. I mean, that is a great price.
Does
that even exist?
I don't know if it's a 17 or 1,800 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath townhome.
I mean, good Lord, you're going to have retirees.
The market may tell us we're wrong and the prices have to go up.
I think the market is going to tell you you're wrong and the prices have to go up.
Yeah, so, the price will be set when they go on the market. I tell that with every client I have. I mean, we start with a conversation. I'm like, I ask them, if you want to work with me, let's enter a listing agreement. We'll put a number on the listing agreement. But we're going to continue this conversation to the day we go on the market, because even in a 2-week period, something could happen that influences what we think the value of that home is.
This question's come in. Who's the builder of the townhomes?
I'm not going to get into all that.
Okay.
I'm not ready for all
that. I'm sorry. It's going crazy here. It just shows you how tight the market is right now. Alan Paulson is calling you the market man here.
They're not new construction if people think that.
Yeah, well, you said they were built in 2007.
Yeah, 8, 9, something like that.
Yeah. So Michael Bullock says the best influence on home prices in Albemarle is the abysmal high-speed internet coverage around here. How are folks managing or handling lack of broadband around counties, in particular Albemarle, which is your specialty? Are they saying, all right, I have to do what I got to do. It may not have broadband, but I need a place to live.
That's a personal decision. I've worked with people that have I actually sold a home with Starlink on it. You know what that is?
Starlink is Elon Musk.
Yeah. And so that's a crazy situation. But these people had I
mean, he's doing that for Ukraine.
The satellite goes with you, not your house. And so these people were buying the house, and after we got it under contract, they realized they had language in their employment contract that required them to have a certain level of broadband, or they couldn't keep their job. And so it turned into a whole thing over Starlink. But that's a personal conversation. I just helped someone buy a lot to build a home that will be a 7-figure home in South Fork Farm, and only a thing available to it is CenturyLink DSL at like 5 megs. And that's, I guess, I don't know where the threshold is for the amount of TV watching you do and streaming you do, but
I mean, I don't think that can accommodate it.
Yeah, these folks,
not if you have kids that are streaming and you're doing a Zoom or something like that.
Yeah, retirees look at it differently than people with kids and people with jobs and working from home. But I would say this: Firefly and Central Virginia Electric Co-op, they are trying to get that stuff out there as fast as they can.
Christy Lynn Beck, I would encourage you to contact Greg Slater immediately after the show. He's got an 11:15 hard stop, which is in 4 minutes. So you may have some time in the car after to reach out to him.
I'm going straight to the chiropractor.
Okay, he's going straight to the chiropractor. Reach out to him immediately from what I'm seeing right here. This question, so we have 3 minutes here with Greg Slater. Do we think that eventually buyers are going to say enough is enough? And that'll slow the market?
Some already are. And that's what I keep telling people. That's when this is going to end. When the pricing and the bidding gets to be enough is enough, and someone puts a home on the market, and 10 people look at it and nobody makes an offer, that'll be our first data point that buyers have had enough. And we're not there yet. Well, and next month, I'll look at these numbers again to see how many homes we listed, what percentage of them sold immediately, and when that number starts going down, we'll know. Well,
and we haven't even seen, guys, 3 minutes left. We haven't even seen here the impact of UVA enrolling more students than they ever have before. That's happening this fall. And UVA is hiring more people than they've ever had before. That's happening this fall to accommodate the largest enrollment the university has ever had. That will have an impact on housing in this community. We also haven't seen the impact of the data science school on Ivy Road that is going to open on the near horizon, $125 million world-class facility in Ivy Road close to the Boar's Head. We haven't seen the impact of what that's going to do to real estate here. Sarah Hill Buczynski says everyone should check broadbandnow.com for availability. Neil Williamson is sharing a link to the Albemarle Broadband Authority. Those comments in my comment section on my personal Facebook page. With 2.5 minutes left, Greg Slater, I promise you I'm mindful of time here. What do you think the back half of the year is going to do in Central Virginia and the car footprint?
It's a good question. That's why I look at these stats every month to see if I can get the first whiff of a change. We're going to take it 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, one client at a time right now.
Does it get better for buyers in particular?
Maybe by the end of the year.
You think?
Maybe.
Are you being optimist or are you being realistic?
I'm going to be a little bit optimistic because we're double-digit appreciation will end. And what will it mean when we go back to, the bubble theory is we're going to hit a point where prices just boom. But the correction theory is just like we corrected during the recession, right? We corrected down, and then we went back to 1% to 3% appreciation. Guess what? We got all the way back. It took a decade. And now we're doing this again. When we did it the first time, it was a bubble and it popped. This time, you can correct up just like you can correct down. So is the forces of the market correcting the supply and demand challenge up to a point where we find that equilibrium in price so that it starts, that appreciation goes back to 1 to 3? And if that's the best case scenario into all this, by the way, go back to about 1 to 3% appreciation. So we have this correction and then we go back to a normal chart. And when people have the ability to look at a home or more than one home and think about their decision and debate one home versus the other, everything will feel better and the market will sort itself out. But when I was driving over here, I was thinking about it. You talk about people don't even get to choose what they want right now. They have to choose what they can get.
Yeah. Final question here, about 30 seconds, and we get you out on time here. 2 brokers, a realtor, and a home inspector on various social pages have all said, and I'm paraphrasing, we're working harder than ever before for the least amount of deals that we've done in a long time.
100%. As just talking to my industry colleagues there, we've done a lot over the last 18 months to try to figure out how to navigate this market. We've all learned how to do business differently. We all had to learn what was the best practice for coming soon? How long you're going to hold up showings? If someone tries to buck the system and make you an offer to to stop all the other contracts, are you going to take it to your seller and let them sign it, or are you and your seller going to decide to keep holding it open until more offers come in? All these things. And I described it to you as, when I look at these daily inventory rates, looking at Friday and looking at Tuesday it matters because we have settled into this world where the most common practice is coming soon for some period of time. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe just Thursday. But the home's on the market Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we're looking at offers on Monday or Tuesday. So we're setting ourselves up right now to never know how our weekends are going to be for the foreseeable future. And it just is what it is, because we always have to be ready, and we always have to be ready to go do work that may not result in anything. We have to have very hard conversations with our clients. And I have not found a realtor who's enjoying this. Last year, a lot of realtors were able to say, yeah, I worked hard, but I was very well compensated for it. This is not going to be the case. When we're off the number of contracts we're off that I showed you, that's going to reflect in the closings, which is going to reflect in the amount of people that are getting paid to do transactions. One of the things I track as well is, as a former president of the car, how many realtors we have doing X million. And last year we broke all sorts of records. Appreciating prices are giving realtors raises on a transactional basis. So maybe
you're doing less deals.
You're doing less deals, but maybe you're getting a raise. That is, there's an equilibrium to commission rates. These are variable, and there can be downward pressure on commissions.
I say this all the time. You're phenomenal in this setting. You're phenomenal in a talk show setting. And Mary Sherry says on LinkedIn, he needs a massage. And then
I do.
Said, Mary Lewis at massagetherapy.com. She says, thank you, gentlemen, for a fantastic show. Multiple people saying this. All right, we got to go. He's got a hard stop. He's got a Cairo point. Great job.
Thank you.
Great job.
That's fun.
It was so fun. Greg Slater, guys, Ness Realty, associate broker, just one of the smartest dudes in this game. Judah Wickhauer, thank you very much. This is Real Talk on a Tuesday. We'll see you with the I Love CVille show in T-minus 1 hour and 13 minutes. Take care. 117, sorry. 117, sorry.